This episode of Simulation Nation is brought to you by Avkin, your one-stop shop for everything wearable simulator and standardized patient.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Simulation Nation. We are here to talk to you guys about AI and its role inside of healthcare simulation. So this is a topic that I think we've heard over and over again in terms of coming up at conferences, coming up at webinars, and all different areas. And I think there's some things that I agree with, and then there's other things that I don't necessarily agree with in terms of capacities of AI and the way that it's going to, I guess, interface with healthcare simulation. So I think it's worth having a conversation. I will say that Amy is a little bit more nervous when it comes to AI and even the topic of AI, really. And I think I can definitely see more of the benefits. But I think it's worth having the conversation because I think there's a lot of people out there that feel like you, but also feel like me. And everyone's trying to find the balance of what this new technology means inside of our space.
Well, and I also want to say that we're bringing Nate into this conversation.
Yeah.
Hi.
So with every presentation or every podcast that we do, Nate's voice is always there, and I know you guys hear it as consistency. He doesn't record that. That literally is every single time we do it.
His background's in radio, so it fits.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
but you know, having someone a little more techie on here. Now, I just want to say, Nate and Megan are of the same generation. So for me, as what I would call myself is a digital immigrant, you all are digital natives, right? So I can remember a time before the internet was a thing.
Yeah.
Right? So you guys now are going to be, I remember a time before AI was a thing. So it's kind of
Well, I think I remember a time before phones because it was like when I grew up, phones were not.
No. There were phones.
iPhones. There weren't smartphones. Smartphones.
No, I'm talking about like landline phones. There was landline phones where you had it at your house and you picked it up.
I don't remember that. Okay, I don't remember that. Let me be clear.
Phone books,
I remember.
phones now.
No, I remember a phone book, and I had a brick phone in middle school for in case of emergency. I was before texting, things like that. But it is the like. Yours would be, I remember before internet. Mine would be, I remember before smartphones, because I do think that that's probably my cutoff is like my childhood. But then like as I grew up in high school and things like that, that was when then smartphones and the iPhone and everything like that.
Right, but what I'm saying is the internet didn't come till I was an adult. So AI is coming as
I'm an adult? Okay, yeah, then I guess so it is a little more.
That's the analogy that I'm trying to draw, is that it feels a little more like I'm on this sliding board or even skiing downhill out of control. Like that's the feeling it is just that I don't know, as you said, I don't know where the boundaries are and I don't know where to stop it. And even if I wanted to, I'm not sure I would know how. And in fairness, right, I think most people my age probably feel a little bit the same way.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't head into simulation, as nurses or as healthcare professionals, we didn't head into simulation education because we love technology. Some people did, I guess, but for me, that was definitely not the reason. The reason was the ability to replicate the clinical learning environment, right? So the more tech we get, it's a little scarier, I would say.
Yeah, and I think, again, all of that is fair, and I think it's how a lot of people are feeling. But I think that something I heard, I guess it was a few months ago, but basically, I think all of the news and headlines in terms of AI is going to take everybody's jobs, AI is going to take over all of these industries and make it so much faster, easier, and better, and all of these things. There is a sense, though, where in terms of these different emerging AIs, there are stockholders, and there are people who want people to buy more stock of these things. So basically saying, this is going to be huge. Get in now because it is going to take all of this over. And if you invest now, you are going to be billionaires, XXXXX based off these things. So I do think that there is a vested interest in their...
It's a hype?
I'm saying that there is a vested interest in someone saying, hey, here's all of the possibilities, because their job is to sell, this is the possibilities.
Right.
In that same conversation, that same person's not also going to go, and here's the limitations. And here's where we don't really know where that boundary is.
So it's marketing.
And here's where we're still pushing it because we're not really sure what's going to happen when we get here. We know we can get here, but we're not sure what's beyond that. But they're going to sell you on the vision because of that. So it is exciting. There's a lot of ways to harness it. There's a lot of ways to use it. But we also just have to understand that in terms of the headlines, the news, and in such a clickbait world we live in now, any big headline in terms of strong emotional response is what's going to get pushed and be in front of us.
But in the same way, right? So if you look at it from a healthcare person who has a healthcare background, I have clinical judgment. Like I can walk down the street and I can look at somebody and say, "Ooh, that person's got liver disease."
Yeah, I know you've said that to me my entire childhood of different people walking around.
But the critical thinking that it requires to know what's clickbait. I mean, there have been times where I have sent something to my children like, "Do not click on that link," right? Because that is, but I have a hard time judging it, and I don't know where that sixth sense comes from. But it is the same idea of with AI of, well, what of it is hype and what isn't? So let's talk about what some of the practical benefits.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that I think that as healthcare simulation people in this industry, right, we have to start separating a little bit more of what is Google pushing and what are the big industries pushing in terms of taking over jobs in these big clickbait articles, but then actually then breaking it down and saying, okay, I can consult that in my own personal life in terms of like, oh, that makes me feel a little bit nervous. That makes me a little bit scared of what the future could be. Makes me feel a little bit uneasy. We can kind of put that over here. But then let's think about it for actual healthcare simulation and like actually thinking through what would this mean for my job inside of the sim lab, and not necessarily being in the capacity of, oh, because it makes me nervous about the future of the world and humanity and all of these things, I'm not going to shy away from it in terms of being like, I don't like that idea, so I'm going to reject it. It's more of like, how can I practically use it in my job, where again, it's about saving time and saving money. I will say that the first time I started getting introduced to, ChatGPT, right? Like I will say that there are so many different AIs. It is
How
not
many
one
more
AI.
AIs, Nate? How many?
There's Claude, there's Copilot, there's a lot. And in all honesty, a lot of these are systems that you can set up GPTs with inside. So it's almost
What's
like
a GPT? What?
virtually like if you think of ChatGPT as the internet, a GPT by itself is a website.
Oh.
So it has a certain function that it's created to do.
Okay. Yeah. So there's I mean, as far as I knew, it was like when you're on the internet, even on Google, it'll give you an AI response.
Because it gives you an AI overview. So the difference here, just to make sure we're covering our basis in terms of what we're like the 101s here, is that basically what AI, well, I should say ChatGPT is doing, it is searching all of the internet and it's searching all of the different areas to then give you a conglomerate of information.
Right.
So in the past, when you would use Google and you would search something like a question, basically what that was doing was taking keywords from websites and trying to find you the best website to match what you needed. Now what AI is doing is basically taking a conglomerate of what it can find and summarizing to give you the best answer. So it might say in one of your responses, oh, some believe that this is what's going on, but others believe this. But some of the other interesting things is not just using it as a search engine, but also the concept that it's almost like you can have conversations with different types of people. So like if you think of like in a, psychology lens, it could be have a conversation with me about X topic as Sigmund Freud. So then you're basically going back and forth and having this conversation, and AI is pulling from all of the books and articles and things like that person has written to basically compile what their opinion would be on different areas. I think the thing that we just need to know is that Google and all of these other major systems have all been working towards different forms of AI for years and years and years. And they've tried it with robots and it's been unsuccessful. They've tried it in all different capacities and there has been limitations and they've had to shut it down and things like that.
Yeah,
so this isn't like
some robots that have gone rogue.
Yes, there's been robots that have gone rogue, very similar to iRobot.
I don't know if that's clickbait or not.
No, that is true. There has been robots that were able to process information faster than the scientist behind it could override what the robot was doing. So basically it was becoming independently
Jekyll and Hyde.
intelligent. So it is the element that there is an iRobot-ness to all of this, right? But I think the part that we have to remember is like, this has not just popped up and now all of the sudden everything is, you know what I mean? Like that robots will be here in 5 years, right? I think it's the concept that we have to understand that everyone's been developing this for years and years and years. And these are just new forms that have taken strong roots in terms of people saying, oh, here's a practical new search engine for me to use. And it has become more widely adopted by the masses than what other things have been worked on for a long time.
And one thing I'll say, going back to that search engine concept, historically, if you wanted to learn anything academically, you really had to go into Google Scholar. And what ChatGPT has done for me is I can take a topic and say, show me all of the peer-reviewed journal articles on this. It will give me a full listing, and it will also give me the links to the journal articles. So it does give you a much more comprehensive, in my opinion. You can kind of winnow things down to be very specific of, I only want peer-reviewed journal articles from journals that are, you know, such and such impact effect, you know, higher. So so it does give you that ability to kind of hone in and really get quality ideas.
Yes.
But you're not going to just take that, summarize it. You're going to go into each of those journal articles then and to decide it for yourself.
Yes. And the goal really is considering where there's time savings and what is when you're starting to replace you thinking through what the problem is. And that's, I think, where, again, it's like, that's where people, I think, get very scared or nervous when it comes to AI in general, is they start to feel replaceable. And it starts to feel like, oh my goodness, well, what's my role? Or what's, if technology can just come in and take this over, what am I doing then? What's my purpose? And I think that that is a big wave where people start to put shields up or get nervous about it, and then it just kind of starts to block things off. Or I think you can have the opposite effect of where people get really excited about it and they start to go almost too far in terms of, again, not putting in the brain power, because we're seeing that a lot in terms of younger, like high school students right now, of them going in and basically teachers are now having to use a lot of things to try to detect AI inside of papers and things like that. College as well. I'm sure there's a lot of people right now who have that same thing inside of their institutions. But that's where I think people get frustrated, but I think there's really is a happy medium. And I want to just talk about like some of the practical ways that I think that people can use different AI technologies inside of their sim lab.
Yeah.
You are able to build out different platforms. And Nate, you probably know a little bit more about this than I do, but being able to build out, like if you wanted a scenario developed and things like that, you can build something out that already has different rules and parameters around that.
So that would be called a learning language model, an LLM, and you are able to set those things up yourself. And I think, and from my understanding, that's kind of the basis of creating what is then a ChatGPT that you release, or a GPT specifically that you release. So, like, I've found GPTs for healthcare simulations that it'll write you healthcare simulations that's created by a doctor. I didn't go into the background of it, but there's a ton of good reviews on ChatGPT. So it's laying out the rules and regulations so that when you prompt it, it is giving you a standardized, in a way, response where it's following the rules and regulations.
Because if you were to just go into ChatGPT and say, write me a major depression simulation about a 45-year-old woman, that you're going to get probably a way wider array of something that you may not necessarily want, or like it will be more off in terms of what you're expecting, because you have to think they're scanning the internet and they're taking anything and plugging it in. So if you have it where you've already put in the parameters of, you know, Saren's best practice, I'm utilizing a standardized patient, so I'm also going to put an ASPE Saren's best practice. I have a character description. Here's the outline of the character description. Here's my outline of the simulation. And those are the parameters that are all put into this GPT. Then when you go in and plug in, give me a major depression simulation on a 45-year-old woman, because you already have the parameters, you're going to get out a much closer response of what you're actually looking for. I know that there are a lot of institutions that are starting to do this in terms of learning objectives and just being able to say, I want a general framework to work off of. So I'm going to start using these in terms of being able to plug in the scenario that I want and being able to get accurate lab values and being able to go back and look at what actual, like, okay, this is what the medications would be. But all of those things that would be extremely cumbersome to go in and try to find, oh, this would be the accurate history of this patient and all of these different things. That's something that, again, can get plugged in and spit back out, where then you're not spending the hours going in and finding all of those different values.
But what I hear in this is, at the end of the day, it's still not going to replace that subject matter expert, right? It makes their life easier to give, from my perspective, having something to start with makes everything 100 times easier, right? But you as the subject matter expert, or whoever is your subject matter expert for that particular simulation, would still need to thoroughly review that and make sure that it is accurate and on point.
Yes. Yeah, I see it more as a electronic consultant over anything. So if you think about one person creating one chat or GPT with their expertise, that's just them consulting with you on an electronic and digital level compared to them sitting face to face with you. You still got to check all of that information to make sure that they are correct, that it works for your audience or for your clientele. But it'll just steer you in the right direction with their guidance.
Yeah. Right. And I think our brains are wired to see the things that are wrong. So that's where it's super beneficial, is if you're writing a simulation, you're automatically, as a subject matter expert, going to be able to pick out the things of that doesn't make sense, or that's not fluid. But, obviously it's not going to replace humans. It's kind of like this high fidelity mannequin where I kept, my mantra has always been, they're not going into the hospital to take care of plastic. They're going to the hospital to take care of people. So they've got to learn to interact with people. So at the end of the day, we still need people. Technology is not going to replace humankind. But if you see it as a help or as some type of augmentation to assist you or make this process go faster or smoother, that's where it can really be a benefit.
Yes. And I think that we still have to be cognizant that with AI, one of the biggest things that we've heard back is that it has a lot of racial biases in terms of how it's written. Because, again, it is scanning the internet and taking mass things, and so it comes with wide sweeping generalizations. So that's something that as you're writing it or reviewing it, you have to be cognizant of what the different racial biases can be, what the different background biases can be, because again, it will spit you out probably the most stereotypical patient in that scenario, right? Yeah. So you have to work through thinking, I don't want this to be the most stereotypical patient it could possibly be, and going through and vetting it. Because, again, that's the realities of it. You, as the clinician, are going to also have patients that you can think of, right? Like when you're writing a scenario, I would say 9 out of 10 times, I always hear people say, I start with a patient in mind, and that's what I'm going off of. I'm going off of a life experience I had. Obviously, anything with AI does not have a life experience. So then you're going to go in and you're going to add in those different levels to make sure it's a complex patient, because you don't want it to be the most basic patient it can possibly be. You want there to be complexity. And that's what makes simulation rich, right? Is that it feels like, this is a real person that I actually experienced.
It's got layers above the iceberg and layers below the iceberg, right?
Yes.
And they're really going to, ChatGPT is just really going to get above the iceberg, probably.
Yes, in terms of giving you, again, the most stereotypical baseline, right? So those are all things that you need to go back and check. Obviously, it can make errors. It literally says that on the thing. ChatGPT can make errors. Be cognizant of that. So again, this is not to say that you plug it in and you don't read it again and then you just print that out and give it to your students. It's, here's your starting point. Here's how you work from. I've heard of people using it for resources for standardized patients, of being able to plug in the character and then basically saying, I want videos that would accurately represent this patient. So then basically it can say, oh, here's somebody who has a similar background, right? So like if you think of YouTube.
It doesn't make up a video. It pulls from,
yes.
You're saying. So the reason I say that is because my husband, your father, is a fire chief, and he can literally put a picture of our house on ChatGPT and say, set it on fire.
Yes, so, you can do all of those things.
I thought they were going to take this and make video. I was like, wow, that's mind-blowing. Okay, sorry.
Sora 2 just released like yesterday or 2 days ago, and it is a video production GPT like you're talking about, and it is supposed to be able to do that. It's getting better and better by the day. Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
so,
I start to get scared with that kind of stuff.
but I mean, again, at the end of the day,
crazy.
it's thinking through, though, in terms of it being helpful, right? It's the fact that it's like, but you can harness this for helpful things. Now, again, there are limits. There are limits in terms of what it can do. There will be errors. Like, again, if I've ever plugged in just like a basic image onto ChatGPT, I was doing photo editing recently, and I was trying to get a person out of my photo, and basically when I was doing it, it honestly just kept giving me different faces of a different person, like over and over again, and it was like, no, I want this out. I don't want this, like, I don't want you to keep replacing the face of this person. I want this person out of the photo. But like, you'll have the same thing, and again, there's different complexities and advancedness of AI tools and all of those, but in terms of just like what you're plugging in, it does not mean that the most basic versions are going to spit back out like, and here's your perfectly crafted video and things like that. Now, again, it can give you options. I think that the biggest thing in terms of thinking about scenario development and character backgrounds is just the inherent bias that you're going to get back out of it, and being cognizant of saying, I don't want this level of biasy, or I don't want this stereotypical version of this person. I want a more complex in-depth. And that is somewhat of a limitation in terms of trying to get to the complexities in the heart of a person. It's never going to be the creativity of a human being being able to figure all of that out and write it out. But if you're looking for, I want I just want a basic version of this, then yes, you can get that and get a basic version of what it is that you're looking for. So again, you could do videos, but what I would recommend is that you're pulling and trying to say, this is what their background is, and find me a video that would accurately represent that. So I used to spend hours on YouTube looking and watching videos of different people from that background or that demographic, and pulling those interviews directly and putting them on the character descriptions.
And that's to help, just as a sideline, that's to help the SP prepare for the role.
Yes.
And we had Karen on that talked about her idea of actually having these videos like in her hip pocket, so that when they're writing a new simulation, that we can all agree on pain or anxiety or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So this is just a little different, where it's prep work of like, what's under the iceberg? What makes this person tick? What's a day in the life of this person like? Mm-hmm. So it gives a frame of reference for the SP, and if multiple SPs are portraying the same role, they all are on the same page as to what that is.
The other thing that I've heard commonly used for is thinking of immersive rooms. So being able to do those more immersive room spaces is now creating video and photo that will be projected into these immersive spaces. So basically, rather than it just being a baseline, and honestly, I'm not going to lie, I think some of those immersive rooms photos don't look realistic to what it looks, almost like a drawing, or it looks like a lower quality option in terms of what they can look like. With these, you can make them look hyper realistic, where they're crisp, they're clear, and you actually have things that are happening and progressing, like you talked about with having a video that you could make it so that then the house does get set on fire and then it moves over, but it doesn't look like a video game. It looks like real life. And I think that that's the other difference, is like, I think that we've always struggled in healthcare simulation, because with any of our VR and things like that, those technologies are not going to be caught up to what video game standards are in terms of high quality and like what those look like. But as digital natives, that's what we're accustomed to. Like, we're used to good graphics,
right.
And we've been raised on good graphics. So then going back and being like, okay, we're basically going to show you that looks like something from the early 2000s, and you're expected to go in and treat it like it's reality. For us, that's always going to be a difference, because we know what good graphics are supposed to look like. So that is something that, in terms of AI, it's that you don't have to have developers that are, working at these, crazy video game companies. It's that you could actually then create some of these higher fidelity images, videos, things like that, with the special effects of what would come from a video game.
And I don't even know how that's capable. But before we get into that, can you explain, either Nate or Megan, can either one of you explain...
Oh, keep going. I'll let you finish the...
Oh, I thought you saw your hand up.
Go ahead.
can either of you explain why the immersive rooms are not going to be caught up to the gaming systems?
Well, so I think that, again, it just comes with development work. So, like, if you think of the budgets for video game companies, they're putting millions of dollars into investment for a video game that's going out because they're expecting an ROI back from that. When it comes to...
So think about, like, it's for the masses versus the healthcare simulation industry is a small niche industry.
Yeah. And there's also the problem with the actual amount of power that it takes to run these AI models. So, like, with a video game, you're just downloading it to a system. It's taking the normal amount of power, maybe a little bit more than normal for higher graphic games. But in order to run an AI, like, actual program like that, that's going to be updating graphics. If you're talking an immersive room, AI can upgrade the graphics to make it look a little bit better, but that's going to be a consistent use of power. They can isolate vocals. That's a consistent use of power. This machine's going to be consistently running and working compared to a video game which has already been created and distributed and in a finalized version.
So the layers have already been applied, is what you're saying.
The layers of AI to create the game have already been applied, unless you're playing something that consistently is creating new like thoughts in a sense and not just following an algorithm like the game should be doing, then it's not going to use as much power.
Gotcha.
And a lot of things that I've been reading, it's like if just to create kind of like a LinkedIn image on ChatGPT, it takes the same amount of power to charge half of an iPhone.
Wow.
So that's how much power you got to think about. It's like, what, 45 minutes to charge half of an iPhone. Yeah, that's a lot. That's just one image. So put that into perspective.
And I think that it's just that hard balance of anyone who's coming into the VR space for healthcare simulation. You just have to think of how much money they have in terms of development, work behind it, and then processing power behind it. So it is something that, in terms of, it's in a way, it's because of how we were brought up, but we do have a higher expectation of what the quality is going to look like. And a lot of people do have VR headsets at home. So we are playing games in VR headsets from these bigger things that have super high quality where it feels like you can reach out and touch something and all these different things. So any type of stray where it feels like it's a step back, instantly in our heads, it's like, well, this isn't as good as what I do at home, right? So it's those elements of, I think that's where VR has the opportunity to use AI to enhance and continue to develop, but they are always going to struggle to keep up because basically they're trying to keep up with the modern industries, to keep up with the amygdalas of all of these Gen Xers that are utilizing this day in and day out.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point. But my brain always goes back to then. It honestly would be way better in that situation to put them in with a real person. Well, because then they have to actually, like, it is the real thing, right? I mean, I don't know. I think the idea of those immersive rooms is so cool. Like, I'll never forget going to California Baptist and seeing Sarah Pierce's Black Box Theater. Her background is in theater, but she has come to get bit by the simulation bug and love it as much as most of us out there. And she's applying her theater knowledge to really change this black box theater into different things. So think of a basketball game so that the athletic training group can work with injuries there, and then it morphs into an urgent care center or whatever. She has one that is actually a rainforest in Thailand. So there's lots of really cool things that she can do with this immersive room. So what you're saying is, even there, what I see as cool, you may not see as necessarily as cool because the graphics may not be as good, but AI can now then layer this stuff on top where it's the sounds, the sights.
I think that it just depends, though, because I do think that what Sarah Pierce is doing is that hers is more immersive through the entire experience, where because it's a black box theater and she changes the floor and she changes the settings and things like that, her experience is much more she has standardized patients in there. She's not using, it's not a VR room. She's using it as you're walking in and using your own senses to experience it. What I'm saying is that when they do a room where it is a classroom, but then they're putting up screens to enclose it, where they're not changing out the floors and the settings and having standardized patients, that you can make it better now, because it's not just the free version of a hospital room image projected up onto the wall with a beeping sound. It's now you can have movement, changes, screaming. Like you can make it so that then it's like those images are more complex, where I think
your brain has to keep taking in inputs and then making decisions based off of that. Okay,
exactly.
That makes sense.
So I think that that's the difference. I just really want to end with thinking through that you don't have to be on one side or the other. And I think that that is kind of how I've experienced some of this in a way through conversations, is that it feels like you are either pro-technology and pro-AI, or you are anti-technology, anti-AI. And I don't think that it has to be that. Even if you are nervous about its capabilities, nervous about, like, again, humanity and all of these different things, I think that you can still include it in your daily job.
I would say it's a tool in your toolbox.
Yes.
You can pull it out when you're going to use it.
Yes.
When it's not working the way it should work, or when it's not effective, that's not the tool you're going to use, right?
And you can still be frustrated when students are using it for papers and being like, this is not making them critically think because they're relying on it to critically, like, that is valid. But now you utilizing it to help you write learning objectives in a scenario, you're not, like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm not articulating it great, but I think that it's the concept that you can still be frustrated in situations where it's starting to take away the critical thinking. And there are studies out there in terms of people being able to critically think through things, including AI, not including AI, students who have come up with it, all of these different things. There's a lot of studies out there in that field. But just because there's certain areas that you say, no, that's my line, I wouldn't use it for that, I wouldn't include it in this area, or, that I believe is starting to take away from humans being involved in it. You can still use it for different tasks in your job day in and day out that will help you make improvements, save time, and honestly make things better, because you are able to grab from more. You are having a wider world to get information from, get input from, and then be able to harness all of that, versus you doing it yourself, where you are going to be more limited in what you can access.
And it's one of those things, too, you can use it for a lot of administrative tasks, too.
Yes.
We're talking about the simulations in itself mostly right now, but like scheduling standardized patients. You can throw in everybody's schedules and availability to work or come in, and it'll build a schedule for you. I've also used it for budgetary purposes. Hey, this is what I want to get done. Give me a high, middle, and low budget options so that I can present it to my board or something along those lines. And it will help you build that kind of stuff. So anything behind the scenes, it's just kind of your assistant.
Yeah. I even like it though sometimes, and again, I don't know if this is controversial. I like it also for the concept of being like, I am increasing my cohort sizing for my nursing program. This is what my budget is. It has not grown in 3 years. I'm not getting leadership support, or this is what I'm being told from leadership. Give me the perspective of the dean on this situation. And then it also then will spit back out to you, this is what they're thinking about, and these are some of their concerns, and these are some of the daily issues that they're facing. And then I think it's helpful because you're like, oh, I wouldn't have thought about it from that side of things. And I think that it can give you alternative insights and opinions that can help you start to enlighten it on the situation and start to offer different perspectives for something that you wouldn't have necessarily seen in a different way.
Yeah, and I mean, in that same light, it's also help me write a justification using the mission and vision of the university for this, right? Or help me write a justification for a mission and vision justification for this or that. So it also can tie into like things that basically, like, you're not just saying help me think like the dean, but help me now tie this into our priorities, moving forward.
But you could also put in there with the viewpoint of a dean of nursing who has just been told that they're going to increase enrollment, right? Because then it's also going to give you the perspective of this is what would be compelling to the dean,
right,
because that's what their priorities are, right, and that's what their concerns
and just
are.
To say clearly, this this AI device cannot get into the brain of your dean.
No.
But it is trying to help you see it from a perspective. Again, from my own personal experience, I can remember I kept saying, I need this, I need this, I need this. And I wouldn't tie it to a reason why, right? It was just like, I'm overwhelmed or whatever, but there really wasn't there was no oomph behind it.
Yeah.
And when I started to say, this is what I'm capable of doing with this amount of resources, and this is what I'm capable of doing with this amount of resources, all of a sudden, it was as if they could see that here's the stop point. Are they going to be satisfied with that and move up? But I never realized that I'm a voice of one of many people asking for budget. Mm-hmm. So when you can make a justification that makes sense to them and also tie it into what you're going to be able to do with the budgets that you have and the resources that you have, all of a sudden they have their eyes opened.
And I will say too,
Hopefully.
the other thing that I would be, if I was still working in a sim lab day in and day out, I would also be using any type of AI to help me form a business plan for my simulation lab, as well as calculating ROI, as well as calculating out what are my needs going to be in 1, 3, and 5 years, and helping me create business plan and objectives around that, so that then when I was meeting with my superiors, I was able to present that information clearly, consistently. And again, I didn't have to spend a month figuring it out, but I would be able to get at least a good idea of what that looks like.
Yeah. But the caveat I'll say to that is, as a simulationist, most of us are not experts in business. So to just have them spit out a business plan and you're going with that without actually critically thinking is a mistake. So if you're not comfortable with business planning, which I will tell you the first time I had to write a business plan, I nearly cried. So if you're not, go to the business department at your school and ask somebody there to help you work through, like, does this make sense? Does this sound right? To help you begin to get that critical eye and learn. Now, if I had to write a business plan, I'm much, much, much more comfortable. But, so that idea of having to sit down and do something from nothing is scary, and AI can really help. But you also then want to have a subject matter expert reviewing that, just like you would your Sims, to help you to make sure that you're able to critically think through that.
Yeah. And I think that that's where, again, there is a lot of synergy between combining what the time commitment could be from utilizing AI, but then bringing in a student, a professor, or someone along those lines that can then come in and help you with that if you're not comfortable with it yourself. But I will say that there is more and more resources being put on the business side of simulation centers. And I encourage you that if you are not starting to think about it at all, to start in that direction.
It makes all the difference in the world.
It's a huge, huge difference. And I do think that that's where simulation's moving, is figuring out how to advocate for budget, figuring out how to advocate in terms of showing ROI, business plans. I do think that that is where the industry is moving. So if you've not thought about it, I do encourage you. And I will say that I think
we also have some really good podcasts on that. Like, we brought in Crystal Farina and Elena Harrington, I think last season. Yeah. So there are some really cool things on it to help you with that as well.
And we have an ROI webinar that we did with SSH through their learning labs. But I encourage you to just be thinking through some of these areas that you could be utilizing it. I will also say that if you do have a sim ops person at your simulation center, they probably already know a lot about this. I will say that is typically where they're naturally going to lean, is that they are going to be really interested, whether it just be for their personal life or just having that understanding. So if you are lucky enough to have a sim ops person, I do encourage you to talk to them a little bit more about it. Even if you just have an IT department and have a good relationship with someone there, they probably know a lot about it and can think through some creative ways of developing out a GBT that could be helpful for you. But what I would say is, do not feel like you have to make one decision, one or the other, and think about creative ways that you can use it. I will also say that the more I've heard of people coming to their dean or their superior with ideas of being able to use different GBTs and incorporate AI to be helpful and useful in terms of a time savings, they are viewed as somebody who is moving the needle forward, progressive, new ideas, new ways of doing that. And that is what, again, I think a lot of people are looking for, is how people can lean into new technologies and utilize them versus shying away from them and being resistant to that being included. And if you are looking for options, I will say right now at pretty much every conference, there's topics on AI and different ways of utilizing it. And I think people are always really interested, but I think it's also us taking just the general interest and then formulating it into actionable items that they can actually do inside of their sim lab. And I think that's the important part, is not just looking at it as an entire entity, but what are the practical things of how I can utilize it and include it. And we are by no means experts when it comes to any of this stuff.
Disclaimer on that.
But I think that it is something that we've been talking a lot about, and in terms of what are the different ways that it can be used. And we thought that, again, this is kind of interesting from an audience perspective, where it is kind of just two people looking at it from the industry and seeing like what would and what are the areas that it can be included in. All right, well, thank you guys so much for your time and for joining us on this episode of Simulation Nation. We'd love to hear how you are using AI in your sim lab, and we'll see you next time.